Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Thursday, January 16th, 2025 at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so we're here now to have introductions by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And we have Secretary Curley joining us and members of her agency with us. Secretary Curley, wonderful to see you again. Thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here.
And probably before we get started, I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves.
That'd be great. You don't have the
Not yet.
list of them all yet, so that would be helpful.
Any new members this year? Huh?
Jonathan Cooper, Pownell, representing Pownell, Stanford, Leesboro, Searsburg.
Abby Duke, representing the most beautiful part of Berlin.
I'm gonna keep a running list.
You'll learn all sorts of things.
Hi, Denise Redding, representing Jericho and Underhill as Vice Chair of the committee.
Mike Markoff from Coventry. I represent Coventry, Irisburg, Newport Town. Troy, Jay, Lowell, Eden, and Westfield. Lowell, Eden, yeah. And I'm chair of the committee.
I'm Kirk White. I represent Bethel, Rochester, Stockbridge, and Hancock, and I'm the ranking member.
Tony Priestley, Bradford, Fairleigh, Westford.
Michael Bruton, Berry City.
Tony Mickless from Milton, representing most of Milton and a little bit of Georgia.
Dave Bosch from Clarendon Springs, representing Wallingford, Clarendon, West Rutland, and the bulk of Rutland Town.
Okay, great. I'm pretty sure I spelled,
And of course, most important person here.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Hannah Grace, nice to meet you. I'm sure I spelled some last names wrong, but I'll get them right later. I'm, for the record, I'm Lindsay Curley. I'm the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Before I get started, I didn't clarify I had some slides. So Hannah Grace, I'm not sure whether were they distributed? I don't know whether somebody would run them or I need to run them.
You have your own device to connect to the Zoom meeting so that you're able to screen share if you want.
Okay. So if I might check, our legislative and policy director might be on the line. Jess Bintner, if she's on the line, she may be running them, but I don't know if you can tell or not. Oh, that would be great. Okay, Jess Vintner, if you are able to run the slideshow, would you mind? And if you cannot, I can hook up.
Sure. I just need, hi, good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon, geez. Hi. I just need sharing access and then I will be able to.
I just need you co-host.
Thank you. Okay. Let me see here.
So while she's doing that, first of all, congratulations to you all. It's great to see you all. And for those of you that have been here before, great to see you back. I think this is a great committee. We spend a lot of time in this room and we have a great chair and vice chair I've had the opportunity to work with before as well. And so anyway, we're excited to get to know those of you that we haven't known from the past as well. So today's presentation will provide you with an overview of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, ACCD. We use a lot of acronyms. I'll try to be careful about that as I go through. But our effort in our agency or our work is really to promote the economy, housing, and our communities. I brought with me today Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development, Brett Long, who you'll hear from. As well as our Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing, Heather Pelham, who's on this side of me. I want to introduce to you Hazel Brewster, who's in the Department of Economic Development, and she'll be working with us in the building as our legislative aide. And on the line, who you're hearing or maybe seeing, I'm not sure, is Jess Vintner, who's our legislative director for the agency. And she's been doing this for a long time. So we're really excited about our team. Not with us today the housing team. And again, hopefully you'll get to hear from them at some point as well. I know you'll be seeing a lot from us throughout the session. So this presentation will be kept very high level. And you will try to touch on some of the high tops today. And certainly as we go through it, feel free to stop me as we go if you have questions, or you can wait to the end. Happy to do either one. Second slide. The mission of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development is that we really work to help improve the quality of life and build up for Vermonters and build strong communities. The mission truly drives all of the agency's work across all of our economic, housing, and tourism initiatives. And in creating that mission, our goal was to align to Vermont's broader goals for growth, sustainability, and community resilience. And I tell everybody, we use some guiding principles. We aim everything toward the North Star, which is, growing the economy, making Vermont more affordable, and protecting the vulnerable. You'll hear the governor say that a lot as well. Department overview. So the three departments within the Agency of Commerce and Community Development are the Departments of Economic Development, Housing and Community Development, and Tourism and Marketing. And I love to say that we're small but mighty. We punch above our weight. And we have just under 100 employees within our agency, which does make us, if not the smallest agency in state government, one of the smaller agencies. But we really get a lot of work done. I did include the organizational chart just so you can kind of get a feel for how we're set up. And along with the agency and the three departments, there's some major entities that work adjacent with us. You'll see on this chart, the Vermont Economic Progress Council, which we call VEPC. Again, I told you we love these acronyms. This is an independent public body that's made up of 11 appointed members. 2 are lawmakers and 9 are citizens. And I like to say that we're connected by a dotted line. And VEPC's responsibility is to review and approve or deny applications for the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive, or VEGI, and the Tax Increment Financing Program, or TIF. And these are programs that are designed to support and stimulate economic growth in our state. And the agency's role in this, because I talked about the dotted line, is that we provide program staff, administrative staff. So there are 2 VEPC staff, the executive director, who's appointed by the governor, and then a program manager who works within the Department of Economic Development that support the council and help administer the program. So you're going to hear more about these programs from Jess Hartleben, who's in the room as well, shortly. And then I wanted to highlight the Division for Historic Preservation, which falls under the Department of Housing and Community Development, because they're often overlooked or forgotten, but they're charged with promoting and preserving Vermont's really rich historical heritage. And there is some regulatory aspect to them. But one thing that I love to tell people, because it's kind of a surprise, is that we actually own assets. We own historic buildings and structures that are valued at over $90 million that we manage and we caretake. And in 2024, we saw a record number of visitors to our sites. And that was about 78,000 people that came to those sites around Vermont. Think like the Calvin Coolidge home site, Bennington Monument, just to name a couple that are really popular to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. But we, make sure those properties are well preserved. We even have a ship at the bottom of the lake. You'll also, under the Department of Tourism and Marketing, within the Department of Tourism and Marketing, you'll hear more about the role of the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, and what the role of that is in state government. But I'll let Commissioner Pelham tell you more about that as well. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about department overviews. So housing availability and affordability are not just social issues. They are critical components of economic development. So without affordable and accessible housing, Vermont cannot attract or retain the workforce needed to sustain and grow our economy. Our businesses are depending on these employees who live within reasonable commuting distances to their place of employment. And we want to make sure that our communities are welcoming and they're thriving. And, one thing we continue to hear from our businesses is that they struggle to meet their own economic growth objectives because when they go to hire employees, they don't necessarily have a place for them to go to or to move to. So the availability of diverse housing options also influences Vermont's ability to compete with other states for this talent. The people that we're trying to bring to Vermont, they need housing. And what I want to address sort of right up front is that while we address this housing shortage, we know that, and we're focusing on increasing our housing stock. At the same time, we're still trying to bring people to our state. We're not taking our foot off the gas on either one of them, right? We feel like we need to be doing both and making sure that we're trying to tackle both challenges at the same time. By attracting more people, particularly working age adults and families, we not only address the state's demographic challenges, but we also generate the economic momentum that we need to build more housing. A growing population strengthens our tax base and creates demand for new development and supports the workforce needed to construct the new homes and to maintain those vibrant communities. So focusing on these goals together allows us to strike a balance, fostering economic growth while actively working to resolve those housing challenges. So our goals are expanding the tax base. So more people living and working in Vermont means higher tax revenues to support those services. Number two, raising wages by fostering sectors that create high-paying jobs. We can improve the financial stability of Vermonters. And number three, increasing housing stock by addressing the current shortfall. It ensures we meet the needs of today's workforce and future generations. So with that in mind, I provided some data that will illustrate the challenges and opportunities in addressing Vermont's affordability and housing needs. And I'll present these data points at a high level. I'll let Deputy Commissioner Long and Commissioner Farrell expand on them further. Commissioner Farrell, as I mentioned, he's the commissioner of our Housing and Community Development Department. He's not here today, but again, he is a wealth of information about housing and community development. And as I mentioned, he would be a great one to invite in to learn more about what is going on with housing in our state and how it does impact economic development. You've heard Governor Scott say this again and again. Demographics are our problem. He just mentioned in his inaugural address last week that from 2010 to 2022, the number of Vermonters between the ages of 40 and 54, which is our main workforce ages, shrank by 28,000 people. So we need to keep the Vermonters that we have and also be recruiting new ones. The affordability crisis is the result of two things: high prices and the struggle to pay them. That struggle is reflected here when we look at how much Vermonters earn. This 2023 W-2 data from the Vermont Department of Taxes, as you can see, 66% of Vermonters earn $50,000 a year or less. About a quarter earn between $50,000 and $100,000. And just 8% earn more than $100,000 annually. So it's hard to afford living in Vermont on $50,000 a year or less. And that's what we're asking more than 2/3 of Vermonters to do. So we must get more high-paying jobs into the mix. As I keep saying, Vermont's need for housing is great, and there are not enough rental or owner-occupied homes available at all price points. Having an ample supply of homes will support our residents, our businesses, our communities, and our schools. We have new data to reinforce the need. This past summer, the Department of Housing and Community Development released the latest Vermont Housing Needs Assessment. The results, which were compiled by the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, VHFA, show the state needs 24,000 to 36,000 new rental and owner-occupied homes by 2029 in order to meet current and future demand. Chittenden County alone needs 8,000 to 11,000 homes, but we're not building enough to even come close to hitting those targets. Currently, there are about 2,300 building permits each year statewide. After decades of underbuilding, we need to significantly pick up the pace of construction. And just to make this a little bit more challenging, every year we lose hundreds of homes, at least 500 homes, due to age and disrepair. So we also need to be investing in rehabilitating those units to bring them back online. The high cost of housing. Here we look at the high cost of housing in Vermont and Vermonters' ability to pay for it. Rent or mortgage is typically the biggest single expense any of us has. Again, this is 2023 data. You see the median listing price for a home in Chittenden County is $590,000. That was the highest in the state. The lowest was in Essex County, where it was $320,000. Now let's look at the buying power of Vermonters. The median family income in Chittenden County was $76,000. In Essex County, it was $47,000. Using VHFA's affordability calculation, in 2023, Essex County in the state of Vermont, where a family earning the median income could afford a median price home. That's crushing. And these numbers suggest that thousands of Vermonters will never achieve their dream of home ownership due to that imbalance. We need higher incomes and we need more homes to put downward pressure on prices. And I just want to go back to something because this is what the data is telling us, but I'm going to just speak from my own reaction to this. As some of you may not know my background, but I'm a CPA, so I'm a numbers person. But when you look at somebody making an average of $47,000, trying to afford a home that's $320,000, that still that doesn't calculate for me. You think of the interest rates and you think of a 20% down payment, it is virtually impossible what we're trying to get people to afford. And when you're imagining that people, shouldn't be spending more than their entire home expense, more than 30% of their income, it doesn't leave anything for their childcare and their groceries and anything else for that matter. So our problem is big. We know it is. We know we need to work on it. I just wanted to sort of put a little bit more narrative into this. Finally, I just want to make sure that we keep in touch. We, spend lots of time together this session. We're really excited to work with you. I have a good feeling about the start. I know you're all really excited to dig in. We're excited to dig in and really move the needle, not just on housing, but all things that will help us grow the economy in our state. And obviously we need to, I've talked a lot about housing and bringing people to our state. And again, I come back to the fact that if we can grow our tax base instead of, raising taxes, just bring more people here so that we can spread the expense more broadly. I feel like we can really make a difference. And we didn't get in this overnight, and it's going to take a while to get ourselves out of it. But I know together we can work on this and resolve it. So anyway, finally, I just want to thank you again for choosing to do this work. It's a commitment, and really appreciate what you're doing and appreciate you having our team in today to talk about what we do. So any questions? Throwing a lot at you.
Question for Secretary Kerwin. Michael?
So I want to go back to the Vermont earners by pay range, which is really surprising because I think of the top employers, one of which is the state of Vermont, because I think we have, I don't know how many employees we have, but what is driving down those numbers? Especially, I don't know what the average income for state employees are. I'm assuming that it's more than 50K, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, I mean.
And then the next one is like UVM, which is also, I feel like that would be a better paying job. And then after that, it's National Life.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we only have a few of those employers that are really big. Vermont is largely made up of very small employers. And so it's like it waters it down, right? So, you know, we could certainly get a deeper dive into what state employees make because that's all public information. Some of the other employers, you know, it's a little bit harder to get as detailed. But I would just say that when you broadly think about how many, you know, the working population of Vermont, which is, you know, let's say 300,000-ish, it's just that we have so many small employers, people that are earning in those lower brackets, and so it's bringing it down.
Excuse me, you had the slide with like your 3 primary strategies.
Mhm.
One of them was, you know, obviously related to economic developments and the one about, oh, there we go. So add the tech space, increase wages by creating more high paying jobs. So what I'm curious about is a strategy and sort of how you see it as a strategy, what the agency sees it as. You know, we're a state with, can't remember the numbers, but people either work for an employer with over 500 employees or under 9 employees. And so it seems like there's tremendous opportunity to help those tiny, small employers if they can raise their pay by 10%, right? And so I'm curious sort of if there's an agency strategy for targeting those really small employers to help them have stronger, more profitable businesses.
Yeah, so actually you sort of teed this up nicely because one of the programs that you'll hear a little bit about is the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive, which we have very few tools in the toolbox to really help with economic growth with businesses, but we have a few. And I have a couple of folks here from economic development that I'm going to let talk a little bit more in depth about this, but there are some programs that we have that we can help support businesses that want to grow and want to grow their wages. We have something called the Vermont Training Program that will help upskill employees so they can earn a higher wage. There are other companies in Vermont that have started out really small and, you know, they've come to a point where they want to sort of make that next jump, but they need a little more support, whether it be technical assistance or, as I mentioned, this employment growth program that has sort of brought them to that next level and made them a bigger company. There's some really good success stories with that. So we do have strategies for supporting them. We support entrepreneurial opportunities in our state, and there's some great news, coming yesterday about a tech hub coming to Vermont. When we have opportunities like that, in companies that are very successful in our state already, but we have good news like that, and there's money injected in to help grow and spur new development. We have a great international business program that's supporting trying to bring businesses. When good businesses come in, it brings the best talent in, and stuff kind of grows off that. So we do have strategies for that. And like I said, I'm going to let the team talk a bit about the economic development aspect of that and how we work through that. But we are proud of our smaller employers. And I didn't mean to imply that small employers don't pay well. I want to be clear about that. I wanted to make sure that I didn't confuse that. I was saying, like, we just have a lot of employers. And so there's a very wide range. I also want to mention, we have a gig economy now, which is sometimes hard to really spot what people are making as well. But yeah, more to come on that. But we do have programs, training programs, the Department of Labor, who you'll hear from at some point this session. They also have programs to continue to help upskill people as well, to try to get them and support employers in doing that. So. Great. All right, next up. Heather? Okay, we're going to Heather, sorry.
All right.
Commissioner Pelham, welcome. Good to
Thank
see
you
you
very
again.
much. Great to see everybody. For the record, Heather Pelham, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing. I'll echo sentiments of Secretary Curley. It's great to see some familiar faces and some new faces. And again, thank you for the work that you do. Public service and serving the legislature are high demand jobs. So it takes the best of all of us. But thank you for the opportunity today. I'm gonna hope that my slides are the same as what Jess has, but I'll run you through. I have quite a few, so we can go through them fairly quickly. I'm happy to come back at any time and give you more detail, but just want to take this opportunity to kind of give you a high level view of the agency. So, of the department. Department of Tourism Marketing, there's 14 of us. That does include 2 limited service positions that we have through 2025. And it includes 2 folks in the Chief Marketing Office that I'll talk a little bit more about, but a relatively small team to do all that we do together. Our mission, I think it's probably a little bit no surprise. Our mission is to promote the state. Our mission is to promote the state for visitation, but also for relocation as well. And I'll get into some of the different programs, but I kind of make the point, off of Secretary Curley's comments that when we think about, all the challenges facing the state, I would love for this committee and the whole legislature to really think about tourism and visitation as one of the tools that we have to bring more money into the state. I like to think of visitors as temporary taxpayers. So if you kind of keep that in mind in terms of how the work that we do works with the rest of the agency, I think that might be a helpful kind of construct. So first off, in terms of our different programs, destination marketing. This is the bread and butter of what we do. We are out there every day promoting the state, making sure that people understand that Vermont is a wonderful place to visit. How do we do that? We do that through earned programs. So that's what we say about ourselves, our own programs, what we say about ourselves. Earned media is what other people say about us. And then paid media is what we pay people to say about us. Think traditional advertising. We have a huge mix of tactics that we use. I have another slide. I can go through that a little bit, but basically it's everything from digital marketing to out-of-home advertising to social media to search, all sort of your full gamut of marketing tactics. And then we have different ways that we target and measure our performance among those. And, most all of our tactics drive back to vermontvacation.com. If you've never taken a look at our website, that is the forward-facing website of the state for visitation. And that's where we provide inspiration, travel ideas, resources for folks planning a trip. We have a business directory, events calendar, and so forth. This chart just basically shows you maybe a little bit easier or not to see all the types of different advertising that we run. So this was for our summer fall campaign this year. This was $1 million paid campaign that ran through all these different tactics. You'll see that it's quite heavy on video, which I'll get into in a little bit. And that was thanks to some new creative assets that we were able to produce. But it also includes, like I said, different kinds of marketing programs, depending on where folks are in the marketing funnel. We think of ourselves as at the top of the funnel. So we are introducing the idea of Vermont to folks. Where exactly they stay, we'll give them some inspiration and so forth as they move farther down the funnel in terms of, making that booking or, planning that actual trip. So we're looking at tactics based on where folks are in the marketing funnel. That's the goal. Most of it is just basic brand awareness. And then when we think about markets, it really depends on the tactic we're using. So we are definitely looking at our drive, our direct markets, our drive markets, Montreal, Boston, New York, the Eastern Seaboard is definitely great opportunity for us to bring visitation, but we're also looking at more distant domestic markets, especially where we have direct flights. And then there are sort of more aspirational markets where we try and pick tactics that, are efficient use of our funds, but basically are introducing the idea of Vermont so that we're not leaving anybody out. This campaign that we ran this summer, we were able to achieve over 111 million impressions. And with the videos, I'll go into almost 16 million video completions. So just in terms of time spent with the brand, the amount of people that we're able to reach is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. On this next slide, you can just kind of see this is a sample of some of our creative from the summer. The 3 videos at the top, we had landing pages for each of these new videos. The numbers there for views are completions of our long form videos. So each of these are over 3 minutes long. So if you think about, of 500,000 people spending 3 minutes or more with the brand is kind of how we think about it. That's an awful long time to make an impression on them as opposed to just like a click on a website or search and so forth. So that's where we kind of prioritize different tactics depending on what we're trying to accomplish. And again, I can go more details, but I'm going to kind of keep running through it just so to give folks a high level. This next slide shows another one of the tactics we use is to work with content creators, think social media influencers. this is one of the areas of our program where we, if we're going to, quote unquote, pay for this kind of exposure, we prioritize bringing in content creators of diverse backgrounds, disabled folks, people who might not otherwise be able to activate their networks if we didn't do it specifically. So this has been a priority for us. This is just some of the examples of the folks that we worked with this year. And the way, content creation works is we're really looking to them and their networks is how many people can they reach? And then EMV is the earned media value that we get out of that relationship. So we help bring folks here. They hopefully have we create an itinerary for them. They have a wonderful time. They tell all their friends and followers about it and so on and so on. Then moving on to winter, we don't have the budget to be what I would call always on, having ads always in market. I'll get into this a little bit more. We have had some extra funding thanks to federal recovery funds recently. So this summer, fall, so basically summer, fall has become one long campaign from May through the end of October. We take a tiny little break and then we have a winter campaign that runs November through March. So this is what this year's winter campaign looks like in as far as tactics and goals. Very similar to summer, except that we do shrink our target marks a little bit. Yes, folks can come here on an Epic or Icon Pass from out west, but they are other places that they can ski. So we really focus more on our direct drive markets in the winter. Winter outdoor recreation is wonderful. We know it's not for everybody. So summer, it's just something to keep in mind. Summer really is our biggest season. Fall is often what we're known for. So there's a lot more visitors coming in summer and fall, but winter is actually a place where we see a lot more visitation than our neighboring states. So our winter visitation numbers are higher than New Hampshire and Maine. And that's a great kudos to the great skiing that we have here. And then the next slide just kind of shows, again, similarly, we are heavy into videos here. We have 3 new ski winter recreation focused videos out there. These are all on our YouTube channel. So happy for folks to take a look at that. They really lean into not just the fact that you can come here and ski, but really what the ski culture here is in Vermont. It's really about, coming here and having a good time, feeling welcome, feeling like you are a Vermonter when you're here. That's what a lot of our messaging really is circled around. So that is an overview of our marketing programs. Again, I can go through them in much more detail, but what does all that add up to? We are happy to announce to folks that we have been able to fund some new research, and we can now show that 15.8 million visitors came to Vermont in 2023. We have not had an exact number since 2017, which is when it was 13 million. But we were able to back engineer some visitation numbers with this new research we've been able to do. You'll see as a slight dip from 2022. Don't know if that's the result of, 2023 flooding and so forth. We probably won't know until we see what the 24 numbers come in at. We're also, we had, pent up demand after the pandemic for travel. So we're seeing a little bit of softening there. But all in all, 15.8 million temporary taxpayers. I think that's an amazing story for us to tell. Vermont has a lot to offer, and it's great to see that folks are choosing to come here as a destination. You can see it's pretty much split pretty evenly between day visitors and overnight visitors. And then what happens when all those visitors come here? Well, thankfully, they spend money and they spend a tune of $4 billion. So if folks didn't know that, tourism in Vermont is a $4 billion industry. That is 9.3% of our GDP. It's not on this slide. I'll talk about those a little bit later, but we employ over 30,000 Vermonters. That's 10% of our workforce works within what we call the visitor economy. So this is no small contribution to our state's economic engine. Not only are they bringing that $4 billion to businesses large and small, we're not just talking lodging. Yes, that's the largest piece of the pie here, but we're talking about food and beverage, retail, recreation, and we're talking about businesses large and small. So, when folks come here, they're buying gas, they're buying food at the local store, they're going downtown and shopping in our independent stores, they're going to restaurants, seeing, plays and attractions and so forth. So they also are paying taxes, $282 million. That's direct taxes. I'm not even showing you here. We did the economic analysis with indirect and induced impacts as well. This is just direct. So if $4 billion turns into 6.7 billion, if you get into indirect, which is like supply chain impacts, and induced, which is based on the wages paid. But this is just the direct impacts, 282 million. If you look at that per Vermont household, that is a savings of over $1,000 per Vermont household. So if those visitors went away, that's an additional tax burden that would be on our residents. So again, I just want to put that into context as to how visitation can be part of the positive side of the economic equation for us. Okay, so next area is what we call destination development. So this is really, I would say, a bit of a new area for the department because we have historically been flat level funded. I can just mention that. So historically, our budget has been $3.5 million for visitation related activities. We did receive a base increase 2 years ago for relocation activities. So we're now at approximately 4.5. Just as a point of context, New Hampshire's visitation budget is 10 million and Maine's visitation budget is over 17 million. So we have a lot of competition. But we were very, very thankful to receive a $10.4 million award from the Economic Development Administration as part of ARPA. It was a specific carve out for travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, separate from what the state received from ARPA, just recognizing the incredible disruption the pandemic had on travel and tourism. And that has enabled us to really dive into some areas that either we just have not been able to fund in the past or really thinking about what does the future of tourism look like in Vermont. So on the next slide, it can kind of go through some of the different types of destination development projects that we've been able to do. One of them is looking at economic impact, right? We want to know those numbers, like what does that look like? So we've been able to fund the study that I showed you, those very top line figures. We also have data now on the county level for economic impact. We are in the midst of a year-long visitor survey. We have not had primary research on who our visitors are, what do they do when they come here, how big is their travel party. You know, we haven't had that information before, so we are in the midst of a year-long visitor research study that will give us information on that. We are also being able to procure new data, so data on not just spending, but on hotel accommodations, pacing data, and so forth as to, again, what does this all add up to? And we are about to embark on a brand study. We have not done a study on what are the perceptions of the Vermont brand in, I want to say maybe 20 years. High time we finally have the resource, thanks to these federal funds, to be able to do that. Within the realm of strategic planning, again, we have not had a statewide destination management plan before. So we are kicking that project off right now that will create basically, a 5-year strategy for how do we support the visitor economy. I'm happy to follow up with this, but we have a series of 10 regional tourism forums that are scheduled for the week of February 10th. I realize that you folks will be here. Most likely there are 2 on Monday. But if that's something that, you're able to help us spread the word, we're looking for as much input as we can from constituents of all stripes to make sure that we understand what people feel the challenges are, the opportunities, the priorities for what attracting visitation to the state might look like, and how can we do that in a sustainable way, right? This is as much about destination stewardship as it is about destination marketing. It's really like, how do we make sure that visitation not only we're providing a great experience for our visitors, but how are we also supporting the quality of life for our residents? It really has to be definitely very much in balance. We are investing in a visitation strategy specifically to attract BIPOC visitors. And that's going to include a brand audit of all of our work, as well as positioning, where we might be able to make some inroads, and then new creative that addresses that priority of ours in particular. We've used some of these funds to support our, other work that's being done around the agency, around workforce development and town pipeline work. So we were able to help UVM set up a hospitality management certificate program. Just got an update that is now live. So that is a new program that is going to provide basically for somebody who wants to get into hospitality or is in the industry and wants to upskill, certificate program, transferable credits to really understand, what that career is all about. It includes a capstone project that is a paid internship with housing available if needed. We have over 20 lodging properties who have already signed up to help support that internship component of that program. We have cohorts that are starting in April and in May. We've also been working with the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance to do skill building workshops for bike mechanics, ski techs, and trail builders to support our outdoor recreation economy. And we're also doing a project to really look at what is the local economic impact of investments in outdoor recreation, so that communities, when they're either looking at maybe getting a VORA grant or trying to decide where to invest their money, they really understand, because there are some rural communities where, the natural world is really what they have to offer. And so how can they make the most of that? What does that look like? So we're putting together a toolkit for communities to look at what investments in outdoor recreation might be able to yield for them and for their residents. We were able also to run a grant program with some of this money, which I'll show you in 1 second. And then we are also subgranting $2 million to state parks. They have identified 3 projects that they were not able to find any other funding for. One was improvements of the Route 108 corridor through Smuggler's Notch. One is infrastructure at Bingham Falls, very popular outdoor recreation area that does not have infrastructure. And so it's a bit of a safety hazard. Make improvements there, and then to work on the fire towers on state lands. It's a great visitation tool. It's something that's hasn't been able to be invested in. So just in terms of the T-term grants, if we go to the next slide, T-term stands for Transformational Tourism Events and Regional Marketing. It was based on a program we were able to run post-COVID to basically spread the love. Some of this federal funds, we wanted to share that with some of our regional partners. So we were able to create this grant program, really helping folks think about what would help take their visitor experience to the next level. We had, happens in all grant programs, a lot more demand than we had funds for, over $6 million in asks. We had originally appropriated $1.25 million for this. We actually bumped it up to 1.5. We got permission from EDA to do that. We were able to fund these 16 projects through the organizations you see here. And on the next slide, there's some really brief descriptions of the type of projects that we were able to fund. They really range from helping a regional marketing organization with their creative assets to funding events. Think of like the Winterfest in Rutland or Shelburne Lights or the Mad River Marathon, events like that, as well as we're creating some LGBTQIA event schedule up in the Northeast Kingdom through Catamount Arts. We're doing a mountain bike guide, bunch of different ideas up here. Again, can talk about all this in more detail, so I'm going to keep talking quickly. The next so now for something completely different. So we are promoting the state. It's a wonderful place to visit. Sometimes when you visit a place, you're like, hey, what would we like to live there? So relocation is also part of our charge to make sure that we are promoting the state for relocation. And I would also just note that we understand very clearly that retention is part of that. So it doesn't do us any good to bring in new residents if they don't feel welcome and part of their communities once they get here. So thanks to some base funding that this committee was supportive of 2 years ago, I think, technically, we were able to launch this grant program fully on board in 2024. We have 13 grantees, which are actually on the next page, which might be helpful to see. So we have 13 grantees throughout the state. There's 2 tracks of work that we are funding with them, relocation work and outreach. So outreach is more on the retention side. Relocation, really what that is we have the thinkvermont.com website. That is our forward-facing calling card. Please come live here. This is all the things why Vermont is so wonderful. Our lead generation system on that is our Connect with a Vermonter form. Any leads that we get in through that program. In the past, it had been a volunteer kind of setup that we had with communities to forward those leads to them, that they would provide that sort of one-on-one level concierge service to help folks make that final decision to move here. The GROW program formalizes that. So these are our partners in the GROW program. And then if you go to the next slide, this is early results. So these grants went live at the beginning of 2024. They were structured a maximum of $75,000 a year, but basically to build capacity at the local level. Because like I said, this was always a volunteer effort on the local level. Now we've been able to fund some capacity. Some of our regions actually weren't able to staff up until midway through the year. But even for the first year, I think this is very encouraging in terms of, we're now able, because we have a formal grant program, we can track who comes to the site. This is a typical sales pipeline, right? Like, are they interested? Are they prospects? Are they active? Are they engaged? How do we make that final sale? So we've seen that we've had 52 families move here who've used this program. 97 individuals. If you go to the next slide, you can see they're coming from all over the country, and they're settling all over the state. You can see that there's a large concentration there in Rutland County, and that's thanks to the work that the local partners in Rutland have been able to do. Their program has been up the longest, and they really have perfected. They have a wonderful program. We'd love for you to hear directly from them in terms of how this all works, in terms of helping folks, meet people in the community, find housing, find childcare, just make those connections. because that's what we know, that's what it takes. And then on the outreach side of things, really what that is, it's creating events where either it's events specifically for new Vermonters, so that we can make those connections, or sometimes it's an event that might be happening in the community anyway. I just mentioned Winterfest, think of Winterfest, but then making sure, these organizations will have a table there that they will talk to new Vermonters, make sure they make those connections. I don't know if you noticed it, but on the list of grantees, Vermont Professionals of Color Network is one of our grantees. They work with all of the regions. So that anytime we get an inquiry from someone who self-identifies as a person of color, we are able to provide extra resources for them if they so choose. And then maybe I didn't mention, but in the preview, we have never done, I shouldn't say never, we have not put paid advertising dollars behind the relocation program because basically we wanted the pipeline to be set up before we did that. We are ready to launch a new campaign in the next month. These are some preliminary sketches of what that is. It's basically think this, think that, think Vermont. So think community, think belonging, think nature. That's what we have to offer. We were going to be test marketing this in New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Tampa. We do find that for the most part, the reason why people are moving here is for culture and community. Yes, outdoor recreation is wonderful. It's a backdrop to that, but it's really about the values that we hold as Vermonters that's really attracting people. So excited for that campaign to launch this year. And then now that we have the pipeline and the infrastructure in place to manage those leads, hopefully we'll be able to see a lot more activity there. One more program for you, and that is the Chief Marketing Office. So everything I just talked about, that's, outward facing, that's our department looking out of state and help people come here for visitation and relocation. The Chief Marketing Office is two folks within our office who really provide marketing communication support to other state agencies. So this is internal. So this is about public engagement. This is about outreach programs, all the types of priorities that we have as state agencies and we want Vermonters to know about. So the Chief Marketing Office exists to provide, as much as two people can do, that level of support, guidance, and so forth. So they think about our Vermont brand standards. What does that look like? They think about, we have statewide marketing contracts that people can, that state agencies can access easily to make the procurement process a little bit easier. They do provide direct creative services when they can, but that can be very limited capacity-wise. And there's been a big push, as probably not a surprise to anyone, on accessible communications. So they've been really focusing their efforts on creating branded templates and other types of communications tools that are accessible to folks so they can be, if someone's using a screen reader or otherwise creating things into plain language, or you'll hear more about this from the Agency of Digital Services, I'm sure, but the state will have to fulfill a new higher level of website accessibility in 2026. It's a part of the ADA. New rules are going to affect for state agencies in 2026. So looking at all of our web-based communications and making sure everything is accessible is a big push. That's going to take a lot of effort, but we're there to do what we can. And then really just supporting that communications and marketing infrastructure throughout the state. You'll see this from some of the other departments as well. Just really quickly, some of our partners we work with. Don't think it'll be a surprise. Chambers of Commerce, downtown organizations, regional marketing organizations. I mentioned the Vermont Professionals of Color. We work with VOREC. I'm the vice chair of the VOREC program, Vermont Outdoor Recreation Collaborative, Lodging Association Arts Council, and so forth. Committees, you guys are on the top of the list, right? Yeah. You guys are on the top of the list, committees that we work with. And then in terms of if you are looking for data, like I mentioned, we are prioritizing what we can in terms of data that we can provide, both on visitor volume, spending, trends, tax and employment, all that kind of thing. So we hopefully can provide that. We do have a research page on the ACCD tourism page. So accd.gov/tourism. We have a page there with a lot of research that we continue to add to. And then finally, buzzwords. Yes, if you hear things like visitor economy, if you hear things like the Vermont brand, outdoor recreation, obviously we have an access to, and then destination stewardship, destination development. That's all things that we are very much involved in and would be happy to talk more about. And then the final slide is just some more big numbers to leave you with. 15.8 million visitors annually, $4 billion in economic activity, 282 million in taxes, and over 30,000 in jobs in the visitor economy. And I'll leave it there.
Questions for Commissioner Powell? Dave?
In the marketing.
Yeah.
Other than Montreal and nearby Canada, is there any international components yet?
Yes, thank you. Didn't want to go too far into too many details, but yes, we do look at international visitation. Some of that is done through, we belong to Discover New England. That's a trade organization of the 6 New England states. So we pay into that organization to participate very closely with them in terms of our top international markets besides Canada, UK, Europe. Japan has fallen off post-pandemic. There's a lot of cultural interest there. But really right now we're concentrated on the UK, Europe. Mexico is another emerging market that we're looking at. So those activities are really done through Discover New England. But we also work with Brand USA. So Brand USA is the federal organization that thinks about bringing visitors to the US in total. And so we work with them as well through the US Travel Association.
Very good, thank you.
More of a nuts and bolts thing. You had mentioned that you were looking for people to take surveys.
Yeah,
Do you have something you can send to us so we can post to our social media?
absolutely.
So that we can reach out to our constituents?
Yeah, absolutely. On the visitor survey, we have both, we have postcards. So for instance, let's say you have a lodging property or a store in your district or, is interested. We have a table tent they could put on the counter. We also have postcards people can hand out. We also have just a flyer you can download and post anywhere. So there's a QR code on all those products where they can take the survey online. And then for the regional forums, I would also love it if folks could promote those as well. Like I said, that's the week of February 10th. They are, I'll try and get this right, Burlington, Rutland, Manchester, Waitsfield, St. Albans, Stowe, St. Johnsbury, Brattleboro, Middlebury. Missed one. I'll get you the list.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, because I would love to post this. I mean, all of us, we
Yeah.
just campaign, we probably all among us have thousands of followers, and that'd be a great.
That would be wonderful because
Participation.
a lot of this surveying work is like we know the people we know, we don't know the people we don't know, right? And those are the people we actually really, really, really want to hear from, especially when we're looking at like a strategic, plan, making sure that we understand where people are and what they're thinking about these issues. So thank you for that offer. I'm happy to follow up.
So the question that I did have was, are we able to track where within the state people go? It sounds like some of the subsequent slides seem to show that, we can get in within to like a county level. We're getting a sense of when we show people content of, I saw Lake Willoughby, I saw Old Bennington.
Yeah.
Do we see subsequent connection between content and decision-making, or are we kind of a little agnostic about where in Vermont it is? A temporary taxpayer in Vermont is a temporary taxpayer in Vermont.
Yes, to the second half, they come here, wherever they decide to go, that works for us. I would also just note but like a good portion of visitors, they're visiting friends and family. So wherever they live, they're going to that community. So that's also another thing to think about in terms of who our advocates are. As far as promoting the state, we are a little bit agnostic. We think top of the funnel. We want to promote the state broadly, and we really try to balance out both, like, if you've never been here before, sure, you might like Stowe or Manchester, but hey, what about going to Brandon? What about going to Newport? What about going to someplace you haven't thought about? As you get lower and lower down the funnel, it does become harder and harder to really get that very specific detail. I mentioned impressions. Impressions is not a perfect measure of effectiveness. We continue to think about how we can get to that next level of return on ad spend or brand lift or other more impactful, like what did that marketing actually equal on the ground? Did more people spend money in the state that were exposed to advertising versus those are not? I can come back and talk to you more about that in detail. So we look for that. On the very local level, it's just hard. People aren't like checking in and saying like, here I am, but we do hope through both the visitor survey and as we look at visitor spending to get farther down that funnel as best we can. In Vermont, as we all know, it's a small state, so we run into sample size issues. We run into privacy concerns. All data is aggregated, so we don't know anybody specifically, but we do run into some of those problems getting very, very on the very local level, but we are looking at trends. County is at least a start.
Yeah, that seems like actually really great.
Yeah,
Big
we're trying. Yeah, thank you.
So we had a really big event last year with
Oh, yeah.
Eclipse. So I'm curious how you're, obviously, we can't recreate that. That's.
50 years.
Looking at that
Yeah.
and those numbers in relation to everything else that you just presented.
Yeah, that's a great question. Number one, I will say, if folks didn't see, we did put out a press release in the fall. We did do an economic impact analysis specifically of the eclipse. When I think about that, number one is, our job is to like, hey, we're here. Look at Vermont. So there's, all those visitors that we saw that came for that date. They now have an extremely brand positive, I would say, impression of Vermont. We through social media and so forth, hopefully we've kept some of those folks following us. Hopefully they joined our newsletter temporarily. Hopefully we've kept them on. I know there are specific communities, and St. Johnsbury comes to mind, where they really saw that as like, wow. I would say Newport's the same way. Some folks ended up in St. Jane Newport because they knew that Burlington was going to be really crowded. Hopefully they looked at some of the stuff we were putting out, like, you don't have to be in any one place. That was the wonderful thing about that event. It was very democratic, didn't have to be in one place, you didn't have to be there at one time, but so they found themselves in a community they may not have known before. And so, building that relationship, I think that's one of the really huge silver linings of like, it forced people to spread out. And so they found different areas of the state that they didn't know before. And then, then it's our job to stay in front of them. So I think number one is just that, we were able to gather that attention. I also think it was really good for the industry to kind of come together as a whole. We've all been through a lot, and it was really, residents and visitors are like, it was a positive experience. And so, I think it really kind of helped us rally together and think about, what is our role? And how do we do that? Again, this issue of sustainability and resilience, it's something that we think about as well. Like we would love to have those visitors come back, maybe not on the same day. Like, let's spread people around, but it has helped us kind of sort through both communications channels, like how do we activate folks if we do, unfortunately have an emergency? How do we consider Vermont, visitors as part of our communication strategy? The Eclipse helps us think about that in a more proactive way. So there are a number of lessons learned, but number one is just, it's great to get in front of that many people.
Well, first, I just wanted to say, your agency does an amazing job.
Oh, thank you.
I kind of just like keep an eye on how Vermont is perceived outside. The brand is very strong. So you guys are
Excellent.
doing a fantastic job. One thing I did have, actually I have two questions. One, you said that we were kind of our numbers are doing kind of outside jobs when it comes to the ski industry and like winter tourism. But for summer and fall, where are we compared to like New Hampshire and
on visitation numbers, I would have to look that up, to be honest. I have less access to, I can look it up. I think we're in the same realm. They do get more visitors. I mean, they're bigger states. They have bigger budgets. But in terms of exactly how that tracks, I can come back to you and look at that more closely. The trick is that, it costs us the same amount of money to put an ad in Boston as it does to them. And when their budgets are 5 times ours, it's a little bit tricky. Maine has an ocean. We don't have that. Can't really do anything about that. So, somewhat is the product, some is the budget, some is, transportation links. So there's so many factors that go into it. So I wouldn't want to like try and set it up as a direct correlation, but it is very helpful for us to understand what other folks are doing. At the end of the day, it's concentrating on our brand, what we're saying, what we have to offer, how we are supporting not only our businesses who are part of that, but again, the residents in those communities, and then hopefully providing a great experience so people come back.
I'm going to move us along. We have 30 minutes left. We have a couple of more people to hear from. And I can see this is really interesting for the committee. So we will have Heather back to do a deeper dive on the tourism and marketing department. It is really interesting. Heather, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Brett Long. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development. I've been in the department almost 10 years, so I have some background. Like the other speakers, principally going to go over the programs that we offer that you get a high level understanding of those, but make sure that everybody understands that we have a whole nother component to our business, which is going out and talking to businesses and making sure we're collecting data on them, that we know who they are, as much as we can, trying to get a feel for whether they're expanding or contracting or where they are in the market. I'm going to share the presentation with Jessica Hartleben, who's the Executive Director of the Vermont Economic Progress Council. Let her talk about her efforts, and also with Tim Tierney, who is our Director of Business Recruitment and International Trade, and let him talk specifically about the programs that he's involved in. Jess, next slide. So unfortunately, our Commissioner Joan Goldstein couldn't be here today. We do have a staff of about 28, and that includes 4, I think, people right now that are limited service positions. We've been very active in the last 4+ years in administering disaster recovery programs, both related to COVID and to the last couple of years of flooding. And in reality, I'll talk about it a little more, but we're actually still involved in the monitoring and administration of those programs. The other thing I wanted to address is the comment that came up earlier about small businesses. There is the opportunity for us to work with you all in looking again at a couple of our programs. The Secretary referred to the Vermont Training Program. It's a very valuable program. We find folks are really interested in it, but there was a comment about how we're able to support small business, and both VTP, I'm sure I'll fall into using the acronyms, both VTP and the VEGI program have limitations that make them much easier to apply to larger businesses. Minimum wage requirements, benefit requirements, things like that. So it is something for us to talk about going down the road. Next slide, Jeff. What's our mission? We're trying to foster growth and opportunity. We do it through a couple of different measures. One is the programs I was referring to, and among those programs is we do have a person who's specifically focused on trying to help innovative businesses. Vermont does actually, comparatively for our size, a very good job at creating innovative businesses. There's a nice pipeline of businesses that come out of particularly UVM. And so we have somebody who's working to try to help those businesses grow and succeed in Vermont, because we found historically that a lot of what happened is that we'd have a business start in Vermont and then it would get attracted by a venture capitalist or somebody like that and wind up in a major money center. Boston immediately comes to mind. So, among our tasks is trying to help businesses with financing. We often get involved in even down to the level of helping a business to build a new building. We try to work with VITA and other financing sources to make sure that they know what resources are available. We're actively involved in workforce development, particularly through the Vermont Training Program. Market expansion, Tim will talk about that in some more detail. The idea is trying to cultivate more of the high-paying jobs that the Secretary was referring to, and as a part of that, expanding the tax base. Next slide. Secretary also showed this slide. It's one of our major challenges in our department. The governor all the time talks about affordability, and that's one of our chief objectives, is making sure that our workers are in a better position to be able to pay for things like housing. And Jerry Curley mentioned that in great detail, but it's really hard for somebody to be able to afford the median house based upon these median income numbers. So how do we do this? Next slide, Jess. We focus on grant list growth, and we do that through couple of different measures. We've tried to focus some of our assistance programs, for example, in communities that are having either stagnant or declining grand list, trying to do what we can to stimulate growth in those communities. And then we have several programs that we'll talk about in more detail to try to encourage job creation. The VEGI, or Vermont Employment Growth Incentive, is one in particular. We get down to the detail of trying to work on situations where we find businesses are actually reducing staff and trying to help relocate those people to other businesses in their local geography. The idea here is trying to increase the tax base, trying to increase state and local revenues, working on public safety issues, making sure that communities are thriving. We'll talk a lot about infrastructure. Infrastructure, we think is essential to the kind of housing growth and economic opportunity that we're all focused on. And with the idea that we want Vermonters to be more successful, we want them to experience better affordability and have a thriving business environment. I talked about this a little bit. Fundamental to all of this is working on infrastructure, and Jessica will talk about that a little bit with respect to her programs, specifically the TIF program. We work with businesses to help them at job growth. The Vermont Training Program has been terrific in helping to do that. And so everybody understands, we'll get into the weeds a little bit. What we see, and I approve the applications traditionally, is that the Vermont Training Program is being used by a business to be able to upskill existing workers. And oftentimes what that means is somebody's going from being a line worker to becoming a supervisor. We provide a lot of funding for supervisory training. And as a result, they're backfilling those worker positions and helping the business to grow and to employ more Vermonters. I talked a little bit about grand list growth. We are very focused on that. And, one of the things we've been focused on since I joined the department is we have a curious situation where we have some relatively large facilities in very small communities. And in our department, we're very focused on trying to make sure we understand what's going on with those employers, because it would be tragic in a lot of these communities if they lost those major employers. They're really outsized economic drivers for those communities. All with the idea of trying to increase tax revenues so that becomes a virtuous circle, so that there's more money to fund those kinds of infrastructure improvements, more housing, more of all that kind of stuff, to be able to continue the upward spiral. In our department, the buzzwords are economic development. I've already used some of the acronyms: BEPC, TIF, VEGI. We'll get into some definition of those. We're very focused on business growth. The idea is when businesses grow, they're in a better position to pay higher wages, they're in a better position to offer better benefits, and they're in a better position to expand their employment. So we'll talk about the incentives, our training programs. A lot of what we do is focused in collaboration with the housing folks on community development. We obviously want our communities to be good places to live because it helps businesses to attract additional workers. And through some of the work that Heather's been able to do, we have a much better understanding of why people are interested in moving to Vermont. Things like safety, education, community. We try to capitalize on that. Tim will talk a little about international trade, and that includes trying what we refer to as business attraction. I'll probably fall into using that phrase too. Tim's done a lot of work over the last few years, specifically trying to attract Quebec-based businesses, Canada in general, but specifically Quebec-based businesses. It's a great opportunity for us because a lot of those businesses, they tend to be middle market, family-owned businesses who are looking to break into the U.S. market. And in some cases, in order to do things like participate in the defense supply chain, they have to have a U.S. operation to be able to meet procurement requirements. But it's all, we have the advantage for a lot of those businesses that they can come to Vermont for the day and be back in Canada for dinner or picking up the kids. And that goes all the way to the situation where they have a delivery truck. The delivery truck driver can come down, do what he needs to do during the day and be back in Canada at the end of the day. I kind of referenced tech commercialization under the title of innovation. It is a huge opportunity for us. The secretary made reference to the fact that UVM received a Tech Hub award yesterday. Before I moved to Vermont, I certainly didn't understand the importance of technology to Vermont. Obviously, our largest private employer is GlobalFoundries, one of a very few number of semiconductor fabs in the whole country. And this new Tech Hub is specifically focused on helping them through work with UVM to be able to explore a new technology, which is called gallium nitride and allows for high frequency, fast chips. I also happen to work on a program with the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense has said on multiple occasions just how important that new technology is to communications in the military. So it's a great opportunity. And we do a lot of work around entrepreneurship, trying to help people to start their own businesses. Our major partners, the regional development corporations, got a couple represented here in the room today. I often describe them as our feet on the street. They provide us intelligence on what's going on in the markets and a lot of referrals of businesses that are interested in our programs or need some kind of help. We also work with the regional planning commissions. I referenced VITA. I think they were in already. A lot of what we do is in conjunction with VITA all the way down to the program level. We talked briefly about brownfields, but VITA, for example, administers our brownfield loan program. They approve those loans and administer them. We also work with the Small Business Administration. Tim will talk a little bit about a particular program there. The Small Business Development Center, which is a tremendous source of referrals for us. We get a lot of folks who, on that idea of entrepreneurship, are interested in starting their own business, but they really don't know where to start. And so we can refer them to the SBDC, and they do a great job of helping people to look at a framework and understand what it is they need to do to be able to be successful with a new business. We also were involved in essentially marketing the Northern Border Regional Commission funding. Talk about a little more detail later on, but it's funding that comes to us through the federal government. The Economic Development Authority, Commissioner Pelham referred to a grant that she's gotten. We work with them as well. And on our committee interactions, obviously you all, House Commerce, House Ways and Means, Senate Commerce, Senate Finance, and the House and Senate Appropriations Committees. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Jessica Hartleben.
I think Tim's gonna go first.
Yeah, I think that's just the slide, right?
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
If we run out of time, we'll certainly bring you back, Jess.
That's fine. I'm happy to
At
come back.
2:30, we have not somebody else coming in, but.
I'm gonna speak faster than Commissioner Pelham. Is that possible?
That's impossible.
Hi, everybody. Tim Tierney. I'm the Director of Business Recruitment and International Trade. It's nice to see all of you, and very nice to see that it's a dispersal geographic. We have folks from the Southwest, and we have people at the Canadian border. In between, it's great, the whole disbursement. So today I'm talking about several programs, and actually a lot of these programs, the funding originated, I believe, in this committee that I'll be talking about today. Jess, if you can go to the next slide. There's a lot of data on here, but I just want to show the importance of trade to the state of Vermont. It not only provides a lot of jobs, it provides a lot of our economy. Obviously, our biggest export, which is focused on here, is semiconductors and microelectronics. It's almost 90% of our exports worldwide. There was a big dip last year, But we found out it was basically because something was finished in New York, so New York got the credit. And this year we might get the credit. It's just how it works with this kind of exporting data. I think also another thing on here too is the export services. And now we just know the amounts and what they are. A lot of times we can tell you why we have toys, games, and sports is one of our most major thing. It's Concept 2, and Burton Snowboards gets a lot of credit when it comes to exports, but I couldn't tell you exactly what the companies. We make our best guess of what that's for. But in services too, we have travel services. We have companies here that provide services overseas, like Vermont Bike Tours, or and then we also do our captive insurance is a big thing worldwide, and that's considered an export too. So we're looking more into those actually service exports too, which are not different from the commodity exports. You can go to the next slide. So obviously, Canada, as a matter of fact, Canada for most of the whole Northeast, all the states, is the biggest trade partner. But, you know, from some of this data that we receive, you can see where we need to start concentrating. We can see some of these countries like Northern Europe is a great place for us to concentrate. A lot of our Vermont companies do businesses all over the world. And some are doing really well, and they're entering these new markets. So we're trying to strengthen a lot of these places through various programs. And the program, next slide, please, is the State Trade Expansion Program. This is funded by the Small Business Administration. We get this every year or every other year. It's an application that we apply for. Almost every state does as well. And we get about $250,000 every year that we can give out $20,000 increments maximum to our Vermont small to medium size enterprises to go to trade shows, to do compliance, to enter new markets, do market research. So it's up to them. And then we actually work very closely with from U.S. Commercial Service, which is based right here in Montpelier, and also VITA, which is not VITA. VITA is the Vermont International Trade Alliance. And it's a consortium of folks. It's the custom brokers, it's the lawyers, it's a lot of folks that know that exporting and trade is only good for us and for our economy. And but there's a very complicated system in exporting as well that is beyond our expertise. So we actually, through this program, we actually retain experts in a lot of those trade compliance and a lot of the export rules because they're different all over the world. And so we have to make sure that our Vermont companies can have that expertise because it's definitely not mine. So, so we do a lot of referrals through that program, but it's a very important program. And again, we just started a new tranche of money, and it's already, we've fully subscribed. So we know these people are going to be attending these trade shows. And in a couple of months, we'll be going to Aero Montreal or Aero Mart. We have a very strong aerospace sector here. And we're going up there. It's been a really great trade and export and also growth area for Vermont. Next slide, please.
Ahead of you, Tim.
She's ahead of me. She's better. And much smarter than me. So, so another thing that Brett mentioned was foreign direct investment or business expansion. That's recruitment. And obviously we mentioned that Quebec is probably our fertile ground to go recruiting, but we do it all over the world, and we actually do it within the United States as well. But as far as actually actively, we are in Quebec mainly because that is a great place for them to expand. They like the closeness, proximity. Also, French is our second language here in Vermont. There's a lot of tradition here. A lot of people probably in this room have French names, I believe, right? But it's a great source of these companies want to get in the U.S. market, and we are probably one of the best soft landing destinations for a company. A lot of it's we're very supportive, and I hate to bring this up, but you go to New Jersey, you're going to be highly competitive. You come to Vermont, you're going to find a very supportive environment for your company to grow. And we have a lot of companies. We have Revision up in Newport. We have Peerless up in St. Albans. We have a lot of companies that move across the border and do well here. So we have great examples of how they can do that. And also creates a lot of jobs here for us. It not only creates jobs, it retains jobs. We have Vermont company, they'll buy Vermont companies that might be threatened or looking to sell, and they'll actually strengthen them. We have a company down in Springfield just bought out. You're going to see their grow, Image Tech. They've just been but they're already looking to grow and now they're creating more jobs. So they're retaining those jobs they would have lost and moving up. So it's that foreign investment is very important for us and to keep going. And I do want to say one thing, we're not out there looking for these, and I brought some, we know it's a lot, Jonathan, a lot. I mean, you are the ultimate realtors here, and we work with our RDCs because that's who the folks that knows what's going on. They know where the buildings are. So, but it takes a long time. You're developing this customer relationship, and some are just kicking tires. Some are absolutely, what's a good term, Jonathan?
I appreciate your testimony.
It's already so good. No, but it takes a lot of time working with some of these folks, looking at places, and they're also looking at incentives quite a bit. But that being said, a few years ago, I believe it started in this committee that we know that work in Canada, that we needed an in-market representative up there. And we've never had one. I mean, it's our biggest trading partner, and it was really important to someone that knew the culture, knew the structures, could speak the language fluently. I mean, to be there as a representative for Vermont. And so appropriation came along and we hired a firm, CDEP, out of Montreal, and they're basically creating leads for us. They're recruiting companies for us. They're always out hitting the ground. They're going to trade shows in Montreal and in Toronto. And so that's been a great, what a difference that makes. Instead of being up there, they're the boots on the ground up in Quebec. And we have them till 2026, I believe, right? November 26 is their contract will end, and we'll see. We'll probably be back next year looking for so. So this is the current pipeline. It's so good. So the one thing is that we have had 15 companies reach stage 4. Basically, that means they've come here, they've done a visit or several visits, and they've met with RDCs, and they've looked at buildings and facilities. 4 companies have actually moved here. Expanded here, sorry. That's one term we can't use. They don't move here, they expand here. And but we've also had some other companies that we've spent a lot of time with have chose other states, mainly because of more incentives. I can tell you, we just had a company that moved to upstate New York after we spent a lot of time with them, and they really wanted to come to Vermont, but New York State can offer them a lot more upfront monies, and we just can't do that here. So, it's a process. All right. So another program, because of that, we also, one thing that we realized too, that we're trying to have these companies, we have a shortage of actually commercial and industrial manufacturing buildings here in Vermont. We don't have a large inventory, and a lot of folks. So with that being said, I believe the Rural Industrial Development Program was last year through this committee. $5 million was given for our regional development corporations and local area economic development corporations to incentivize them to put up new buildings or expand companies or fit up certain buildings. So this is what we rolled out last year, about the same time, a year ago. And we had 8 applications from RDCs, and some of them just weren't ready. I mean, so we've actually just funded 4 so far, but now we're March 21st, we're getting a lot of these people to reapply now that they have more things ready. Especially permitting seemed to be the biggest issue. So we're going to keep putting this money out there to get these companies and getting these buildings fit up and expand. And it's really, we have new buildings, and we also have enhancement of existing buildings. These are some of the Vermont business support programs that I oversee too, and it is the BIPOC and Cannabis Social Equity programs. It's actually called the Cannabis Business Development Fund, is a proper term here. It provides funding to social equity applicants that are determined by the Cannabis Control Board, not us. We're basically dispensing beneficiary payments to these folks once they apply to receive monies to help them in the cannabis business. Right now, we're at the people who have relicensed. We are now giving them another beneficiary payment. So, and we're basically, it's mostly everyone's asked for, that's a $5,000 maximum they get. We've only had one person get less than that. We've actually had a few people donate to this fund as well, which was very interesting. The state does not like taking donations, I found out.
They have a different way of doing it.
It blew them away. Yeah. But that program is growing, and I believe that the Cannabis Control Board will probably be coming around. I mean, we don't, again, they're the regulatory commission, and they'll be coming around and seeing what they think is the best way to keep this program going and see what kind of benefits are. But our job is just to get this money out to these folks that are eligible. We also, with that, we hired and contracted with the Rhodes Consulting Group. They are a BIPOC-owned company out of Boston, but they've done these other programs in Massachusetts. So they're providing full-on technical assistance and business technical assistance to these eligible social equity applicants. And we've also the Black, Indigenous, and Persons of Color Business Development Fund. We were tasked to go get a contractor to provide these services. And after we put together a RFP, a request for proposal with the Agency of Racial Equity, we received several applicants, and Vermont Professionals of Color Network was the best applicant that we have, and they're providing these services. And if you go to the next slide, Jess, it kind of says what they've done so far, some of the numbers that they've received from the last quarterly report we received from them, but this is what they've done. I think this fund will be going through probably this fiscal year, I believe. But they've also done a lot of work. It doesn't show here, but they did a lot of help with BIPOC businesses during the flood as well. They did a lot of great services there that is reflected in these numbers. This is me. I'm more than happy to come down and talk anytime and expound on any of these programs. I bet time's up. We're going to give Jess 2 minutes, right?
Those complex programs. Development department, yes.
I was going to see if anyone had any questions. I kind of ran through a lot there, so.
Very good. Thank you very much. Jess, we will contact you and we want you back.
Fantastic. Happy to come.
Yeah, we need to understand that too.
Yeah.
And Veggie and Tiff, because I think we're going to have some conversations about that this time.
Fantastic.
So thank you, Secretary. Appreciate you coming in. Appreciate everyone here. And we'll be in touch, I'm sure, when the budget comes out. Appropriations is going to ask us to have some conversations with you again. So we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all.
Thanks, Jazz.
Thanks, Jazz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it.
Yeah. That's what
Let's
get back.
Thank you. This.
Sweet job.
You let Andy know that, according to what Secretary Saunders told me last night, that
He's not working for the National Council.
phase one is what she wrote, what Andy said. My understanding was they weren't doing that on Tuesday, they were doing phase two, which is the careers, tech centers, higher up. So maybe you need to get a confirmation and maybe use Suzanne of what they are doing.
That's the cost.
Where did everybody go?
Yeah.
Wasn't a break time.